Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to International Affairs. Today is January the 11th, 2026, and my name is Shamsul Alam Panto. There is much more to discuss on today's program. However, I want to introduce my panelists before I can get on with it. In the studio, I have John Dalton, who joins us as international consultant and has appeared on this program on various occasions. And also alongside on through Zoom, we have our geopolitical correspondent, Norman Floyd Barnes, hailing from Washington, D.C. I want to begin with some statements. The U.S. President Donald Trump said Iran is in big trouble as protests spread across the country. Almost all the 31 provinces that has targeted of this protest. It indicates the U.S. is closely monitoring developments and warning Iranian authorities against using lethal force. As far as I know, for the last 2 to 3 days, the nation has been observing a quiet internet shutdown. And as hospitals are piling up bodies, almost over 100 people have lost their lives in these protests, which have targeted government facilities and buildings all throughout Iran. I want to bring John Dalton's attention. Sir, as you were observing my opening, and not only so, over the weekend you've been seeing how Iran is being shaken by these protests. I know that in 1979, the revolutionary government, Islamic Revolution happened and the Ayatollahs came into power. Today, the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, is given such sermons in which he's saying that there are some in his own nation that are appeasing or trying to please U.S. President Donald Trump, and so the rhetoric goes on. I want to understand how you felt and what is your take on this matter.
Well, I think it's, Iran has been destabilized for quite a long time now. I mean, if you go all the way back for the initial revolution, when the United States intervened and took Mossadegh's life, it goes back that far. But the current situation is really all about the squeeze that the United States has put on economically over consistently on oil prices, on driving up inflation, on currency manipulation. And so the government is on very, very unstable ground. And you have to distinguish between Khamenei and the elected government, or the government that's in power, the president and everything else about that. No question that they are unstable, but I think threatening to intervene on behalf of a work slowdown and a riot and closing businesses should not be American foreign policy. I think that let the cards fall where they may, let them settle in. But this constant rhetoric of threatening countries to follow me and obey my rule or there will be problems does not take us very, very far. And I think it's a misuse of American power. We have intervened in enough places recently to learn our lesson. But, we're doing the dirty work by saying that. We're doing the dirty work of Israel. We've become Israel's poodle with respect to Iran. And it's embarrassing. So I hope that cooler heads prevail. I hope the government, and forget about the Supreme Leader, and I hope the government is able to somehow get control of the situation, convince people to slow down, go back to work, go back to university. But as you see, they will respond. Violence will meet violence in Iran.
Of course, this initial protest had began when $1 was almost over $1 million rial in Iran's currency, which has caused grievances between common dwellers who were working in the Grand Bazaar area of Iran. And that is where the start of this protest had happened, and it has spread through all of the 31 provinces in Iran. And not only so, you mentioned Israel. I want to come to Norman Floyd Barnes in Washington, D.C. I know that recently in the last 10 or 11 days, there has been huge U.S. foreign policy changes that includes the capture of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela and now the rhetoric and narratives regarding Iran. We know that in the 12-day war, U.S. authorities and U.S. military was seen helping Israel and coming to the attacking of nuclear facilities in Iran. I know that these are old news, but I want to re-emphasize that Iran is the modern day theocracy, which means a system of government where religious authority rules the state, either directly by a clergy or by leaders who claim their political power comes from God or divine law. I want to come with Norman Floyd Barnes on his take on the matter.
Greetings this morning from Washington, D.C. It's Sunday here. But the world is very busy right now. Uh, Apparently, that the U.S. has put its finger into the Middle East again. Iran is under a crisis situation. They have blacked out all global communications, internet, telephone, televisions, and whatever, while they are dealing with an internal protest. This protest is involving the government and the people, and basically, the United States has made comments and has basically stated that they will not tolerate the Iranian government persecuting and killing their people. To the consequence of that, there has actually been issues and actually things are going on right now to suppress the uh, uprising and the protests. And threats has been made to the United States from the government of Iran that if any type of U.S. intervention will be involved, the president of the United States mentioned that they will intervene. How that's going to happen, we don't know. But they are threatening war against the Israelis' territories, Israel, and U.S. military installations globally around the world. They mentioned that they will respond if the United States intervene with their internal protests. So right now we innovate in the verge of another conflict. The U.S. has prepared countermeasures and response to that. So I believe there will be some more issues dealing with the U.S. and Iran coming up in the next 72 hours. So we have to sit here and watch this scenario goes play over again. I do not understand. I do not know why the United States, is meddling in with internal affairs unless they have a plan. And that plan hasn't been expressed to the Congress, to the people, to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Norman Flood Barnes, on his take on the matter. I believe this Iran issue should not be ignored. I know for a fact that protest, the word protest, or to rebel against the established order when the living conditions of certain people can go down. I want to talk about Iran's past. John Dalton was mentioning about the Mohammad Mossadegh, a leader who was who in the international media knows that the U.S. was complicit in a coup that toppled this democratically elected prime minister. Of course, Iran is a nation that actually did have a monarchy, or those, I want to mention Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who was the ousted or exiled monarchy right before the Islamic Revolution. So right now his son is a leader who is living in exile. Reza Pahlavi is living in the United States, and he is not trying to become king automatically, but he is telling the people that the Iranian people should decide their future in a free referendum. So once again, there is a character from Iran who is living in the United States, and the fact of intention for the United States against Iran to oust this Islamic government or this revolutionary government. I don't see a deployment of the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, in this regard, except for the fact that they have faced off Israel in a 12-day war last year, and in which the U.S. forces was helping Israel out. It's selecting a side where the U.S. should have said it is none of their concern, as it is not even in their dominion, if you would call it, or continent. I want to understand, how does this monarchy, do you think this monarchy will be established, especially because protesters in Tehran have been using the flag of the lion on the Iranian flag while tearing up the flag of the Islamic Revolution?
Well, I mean, the Shah of Iran was America's ally. His son, Reza, Pahlavi, the family name, went to college in Williams in the United States and has stayed there and is in exile in the United States. He has maintained a relatively low profile here, not being active in any politics or trying to show that he was destabilizing the government in any way. But this opportunity has presented itself, and he has gone on the record, not to say that he wants to run the country, but that the country should make a sort of democratic decision to decide what they want. Many people would not welcome another Shah in Iran. I mean, that was not, that government was brutal. The military police, which was called Savak, tortured people, was all around the world, assassinating people. You know, it's a very dangerous neighborhood. There's some bad actors out there in that area. I mean, you've got Syria now, the Kurds, Israelis, Iranians, Iraqis. I mean, that whole area is totally disabled by oil, by military intervention from the outside, and by political intrigues that have always been part of Iran, most notably because of the Shah. Now, his overthrow brought in all of the Khomeini, not Khamenei, but they brought in Khomeini at the time from Paris. And that was the center of the Islamic Revolution that captured, took American hostages, and it has never been. I guess there are some people here who want to exert or apply pressure and get revenge. But I mean, really, I think Norman was alluding to the fact that this is what's our plan? What's the hope? Why are we involved in this? Every time there's a street protest, America can't jump into the fray and try to bring about a solution that they want. So this goes back a long time, and it was the end of Jimmy Carter. Iran was basically, because of the failed intercession in Iran at the time to free the hostages, was basically the end of Jimmy Carter's presidency. But I caution people this is not a good neighborhood. Stand back, let it go. You have a humanitarian response, that's great. But responding militarily or by another round of bombing against Iran's nuclear facilities, I think would be a tragic mistake.
Of course, any retaliation at this point by the United States would only make U.S. President Donald Trump's tenure as in his second term be very fragile, or if not push him towards impeachment by the people. I want to come into an issue that has been rocking all the 50 states in America. Before beginning the program, we were talking about it very briefly. I know that there is a lot of protests happening all throughout America regarding the U.S. Enforcement of immigration and customs enforcement, also known as ICE, in a shooting of a woman named Renee Good. I want to get everyone's attention on this matter because there are arguments in which people say that she was shot without any kind of reason. So people are outraged. The American folk are outraged, and it would be only fitting to understand how both you and Norman felt it. I want to start with John Dalton. How do you feel about this very recent incident?
That was shocking. When you see the video and you realize that the woman was driving her car, turning to the right to try to get back onto the road. She lived in that neighborhood. She was trying to do her business to get out of the way, and an agent in front of her who had previously been hit by a car, and that we'll have to find all the documentation for that, shot her through the window, the front windscreen, then went to the side of the car and shot her 2 more times in the head. And this whole idea of enforcing immigration through force by ICE agents, armed, masked, bulletproof, so forth. I think many Americans are saying that this is just Gestapo tactics. This is Nazism. These people, this is a fascist approach to suppressing any kind of like a normal life. As I said, I think the first week I was here, anybody in America who has a job, who's an immigrant, is welcome to stay, in my opinion. Their family, everybody, sending the kids to school, they're no threat to the United States. They're providing a service. But I think ICE is just totally out of control. And they're all rallying around, all of the security agencies, the FBI, Christine Noman in Homeland Security.
Right.
They're all rallying around the situation, but it's on video. This is not something where it's he said, she said. This is on video that the man shot her in the head right through the windshield.
And that's definitely a very important cornerstone of the politics or the current issue of how the American administration is handling with its people. As you said, it is almost like the Nazi regime.
He's a bully boy. Trump is absolutely a bully. The more harm he does to people, the crueler he gets, the more empowered he feels. Sick.
Of course. And according to the CNN US website, we know that the Justice Department has blocked state investigators from participating in a probe into the shooting, a highly unusual move amid mutual distrust between federal and state officials. I want to come to Norman Floyd Barnes in Washington, D.C. What is the scenario? Of course, in the last 10 or 11 days, the U.S. has positions all over the world, the news and the stories. But if you come into the U.S. States, there has been this shooting, and of course, people, a part of the people is, of course, coming out in support of the life who was actually killed, Renee Good, and there are some who are loyalists to the current government. I want to understand what is the position, how do the administration going to handle this matter? Norman Floyd Barnes.
Thank you for the question. This is a very contentious question. It's very sad that we are now in 2026 looking at a situation like this. The Trump administration has utilized the immigration policy of ridding unwanted immigrants to the point where they are now federalizing the military, the federal troops, and everybody else in a state of siege. Basically, we are basically going out and seeking these illegal aliens. I call aliens, immigrants, people, the unwanted, the undesired. And because of this, we are now having our federal agents, in some cases the military, in a state of high alertness. Because of this situation, they are now engaging their neighbors. I said neighbors. Basically, you have these agents are products of these communities. They live here and they breathe. That's why they wear the covers or whatever to avoid this identification. The problem is that now, without clear policy definitions, the agents are going out there doing the work of the Trump administration. They are eradicating, they are harassing people, they are profiling people, they are removing people based on a profile, not definitely a criminal matter, but a profile. You look like or you could be, so we will attack you and remove you. Reminiscence of the 1930s in Germany. We're seeing history repeat itself. People are not going to take this laying down. They are now questioning, challenging, engaging these officers. These officers have been trained in a certain way regarding the use of force, engagements, and they are not trained to deal with this and deal with the common people. So basically, I use the metaphor, a hammer. You create a hammer. The military, the police, they're acting like a hammer. And they have been giving instructions to look for nails. So everything is out there looks like a nail. So any type of movement, inference, resistance is looks like a nail, and their training is designed to suppress that. Unfortunately, when situations like this case with Miss Good was a tragic situation, it was apparent from the videos and all angles. And I actually, I'm gonna tell you, I've been in that same situation where actually a vehicle has tried to run me over. You have to make a nanosecond decision on what to do and how to deal with that. Unfortunately, the wrong time, right situation came up. This officer was involved in a similar situation previously. We don't know what's going on, but the problem here is it's unfair for everyone because the situation has basically been concluded by the government. The Secretary of Homeland Security, the Vice President, the President has already exonerated this guy, basically saying it was a righteous shooting. So right now, and you're in a situation, the FBI has not permitted the locals to be involved, engaged in the situation. So now the trust factor, the conspiracy matter heightened, it gets worse. People are not liking this. They are protesting. So now they do not trust the government. They do not trust the government in their safety, their livelihood, and what's best for them. So now you're going to see protests, you're going to see incidents, and you're going to see additional situations like this. They're not going to stop the way. You're going to have different challenges. People are going to challenge more. You're going to see more incidents like this happen. And they're going to push and push the government to the point where they have to make a decision. Is it going to be us against them? Now, there's theories out there that the government is trying to entice or aggregate or intimidate the people to the point where they have an uprising, and the government will come in and suppress that. Well, that will backfire. That will be a black swan. I don't think it's going to happen in the manner in which they think it can happen, that we can suppress any type of uprising. The people is resolved with the advent of AVN, artificial intelligence, and everything else. We may see a mess here, the beginning of an internal civil war. Remember, we have artificial intelligence and technology. There are people out here who can do the same thing to the government. They can do the same thing and everything else. And we have external actors, we have internal actors, and we have a lot of people who do not like the government right now. So my question is, why are we antagonizing the people? Why are we antagonizing the people? We need to take care of our country, our people, and hopefully we can come to level heads, calm down, and go to the point where we have an understanding. But again, I keep preaching, what is the plan? What is the Trump administration plan dealing with domestic, international, and global issues? That has not been clear. So until that happens, there will be this area of trust, distrust, mistrust, and conspiracy theory regarding what is the ultimate goal here. What do we want to do? So right now we're in a high level of mistrust. And again, we're looking at Iran. We better look at the U.S.
Of course, I must thank Norman Floyd Barnes on this brilliant observation regarding this shooting. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for going on a short break, but after the break, there are much more issues that we will all discuss. Do stay.
সারা দেশে লাখো মানুষের কঠোর কর্মতৎপরতা ও নিষ্ঠায় এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস এখন 16 কোটি মানুষের হাতের নাগালে। দীর্ঘ 30 বছর ধরে বিশ্বস্ততা ও দ্রুততার সাথে সেবা দেওয়ায় গ্রাহক সেবায় এখন শীর্ষে। বাংলাদেশে গ্রাহক সেবার সাফল্যের পর এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস এখন বিশ্ব বাণিজ্য কেন্দ্র সিঙ্গাপুরে। আপনার যে কোনো পণ্য সিঙ্গাপুর থেকে বাংলাদেশে বুকিং এর জন্য যোগাযোগ করুন। এসএ পরিবহন প্রাইভেট লিমিটেড, লজিস্টিক্স পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস, 22 রবার্টস লেন, সিঙ্গাপুর 218302। ফোন 0065 629 24900। বাংলাদেশ থেকে সিঙ্গাপুরে পণ্য বুকিং এর জন্য যোগাযোগ করুন ঢাকা সহ দেশের যে কোনো 80টি শাখা কেন্দ্রে। এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস, আপনার সেবা সব সময়।
Welcome, Grand Palace Hotel, Dhaka. A majestic lobby blending timeless elegance with modern design. Experience 5-star comfort in suites and rooms. Sophisticated fine dining restaurant. Crystal clear swimming pool for ultimate relaxation. Modern gym and serene spa for well-being. Perfect venue.
Welcoming our viewers back on International Affairs. Of course, I'm joined by John Dalton, our international consultant, as well as Norman Floyd Barnes from Washington, D.C. I want to plan this segment regarding recent issues of U.S. boarding tankers in the Caribbean. The U.S. Coast Guard boarded a 5th oil tanker in Washington intensified efforts to enforce sanctions on Venezuelan oil shipments, according to the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Of course, she had said that there is a ghost fleet that is suspected of carrying embargoed oil. Of course, this vessel had departed Venezuela attempting to evade U.S. forces, and some are saying that they were, of course, in the international waters using the Russian carrying flag. Of course, as according to the rule of the law from the U.S. Or from the UN, the rule of the law is when a nation's flag is used on a carrier, it is upon that nation's rules and regulations for it to be for it to have any kind of legal ramifications. I want to come to John Dalton. I understand there is a Russian issue to this Venezuelan oil issue, not only so because Dmitry Medvedev, who was the president of Russia before, he has released, if not said, that they would intensify their war on Ukraine. I want to start with John Dalton.
Well, I think that once you impose sanctions on a country, you either enforce them or you look like a fool. And since the United States has had these sanctions on Venezuela, Russia and China have come into the breach and have begun to control 70% of the exports of oil from Venezuela. And those ships that leave Maracaibo and head off into the Atlantic, wherever, if that's predominantly where they go, I mean, they're carrying sanctioned oil. So international waters are not international waters. If the United States feels that their sanctions are being violated, they could make a case that they have the right to interdict those ships that are carrying oil. The bigger ball game is that if China and Russia somehow get a foothold into Venezuela, then people feel that that's too close to the United States. That's the same case, of course, that Trump is making about Greenland. We don't want them in our neighborhood. But I think, I think it's the big difference between a flag of convenience, where, like, for example, Liberia will put a flag on a ship that transports goods legitimately, but they're then covered by Liberia's maritime rules, and a ghost fleet, which is basically used to circumvent the American sanctions. And I think that's the United States will assert its rights if they ever get a chance to, but right now they're going to just simply use the power that they have, stop these vessels from reaching their destination with sanctioned oil. So I shouldn't say I'm okay with that, but it seems to me it's a rational approach by a government which is trying to enforce these sanctions.
Of course, we understand this sanctioned oil is definitely going to be captured by the U.S. forces, but characters such as Dmitry Medvedev, who is of course a top Russian political figure, he is saying that the seizure of the tanks or the tankers by the American forces is a clear violation of the 1982 UN Convention of the Law of the Sea. I want to come to Norman Floyd Barnes. We understand that in last year's August, the two leaders of the two nations, U.S. and Russia, were seen to be meeting, but that meeting had made sure that Russia be bolstered against the Ukraine war. Given this scenario in Venezuela, we also hear remarks from the Danish leader that they will open fire before any kind of dialogue when it comes to Greenland. And of course, let's look at NATO, let's look at the Russia-Ukraine war. I want to understand how Norman Floyd Barnes feels about this very recent comment and these tanker seizures, which of course is carrying oil. I mean, is this another pirates versus pirates for the plunder of gold, or for the plunder, in this case, that would be oil? I want to understand from Norman Floyd Barnes.
Thank you for the question. But in a very simple nutshell, everything we're seeing now regarding the Western Hemisphere is in regards to the United States plans to dominate and control trade and commerce, goods and services, and the livelihood of the Western Hemisphere. The goal of the United States government, the goal of the Trump administration, is to have a clear dominance of the Western Hemisphere, this portion of the world. So Greenland falls right into it because of the location, the ice caps are melting. They're looking at the the Arctic Circle and the sea routes, the military situation, how close it is to Russia, China, and the issue again, we back to rare minerals and oil. There are rare minerals, there are precious minerals that are not found in other parts of the world. They want to have control and dominance of. So all of these actions, all of these things between Latin America and whatever is regarding resources, controlling the resources and controlling and try to basically get the countries to not have a relationship with China and Russia. China has a big input into Latin America and South America, just like Africa. And they are providing soft power. They are providing infrastructure development to the point to get in so they have input. The United States feel that this is too close to the homeland, that they're getting too close to our continental area. And so their plan is to rid Russia and China from the entire Western Hemisphere. So anything grossly associated with that, they are now putting pressures on these countries to basically do my way or no way. The U.S. is using military and other trade sanctions to basically squeeze these countries to the point where we don't want you to deal with anybody else but the United States. So if you decide to have business with other countries, we will create problems for you. We'll make sure your economy fails. We'll make sure your people uprise. We'll make sure that your government is removed. So right now we're in a very precarious situation. This dominance of the Western Hemisphere is coming more pronounced, and governments are now reconsidering their relationship with the United States and how they're going to move forward. At the same time, China, as the alternative, is sitting by and waiting to say, hey, I told you so. Come over to us. We'll take care of you. We won't treat you this way. And we can do things, we can do more business at a point where you can afford it, and your lifestyle and your quality of life will be enhanced instead of right now living in a state of siege. Thank you.
I must
Can I
thank.
respond
Sure,
one second?
please, Mr. John.
Norman, one of the other things that we have is how the currencies can affect this American Pax Americana, this
Yes.
whole idea. And we have BRICS, which is Brazil, now saying that they will accept payment of yuan from China on all of their transactions, pay all of their debts, pay for the cost of infrastructure. Can you want to comment a little bit about that? How that, that's not really on the ground, but it's having a definitely material effect.
That is. Well, that is one of the issues that's not spoken about. We're moving into a more digital age, what's going on, and BRICS creates, they want to downplay that BRICS is not going to affect the dollar, but it is. You just mentioned there's an alternative. I don't have to deal with the petrodollar. I can deal with the alternative. We can still do business, and we can probably do more business, and we can do it at a cheaper rate. So right now, the dollar is being threatened, the use of the dollar. That is part of the overall dominance. Is basically, if I have an alternative, I don't have to use dollars. I can use something else. And the BRIC nations are basically coming together, and they're trying to put, you don't have to take this. You can use the BRICS money, whatever currency we have, and we can still do good business. You don't have to be bullied by the big bad United States, and we can do that. So there's a movement particularly with the digital switch over to digital currency, that now there will be a more competitive way, and the dollar will lose its value, which is causing heartache for the United States and its quest for dominance.
Yeah, see, just a quick follow-up.
Sure.
The IMF has now allowed yuan to be a reserve currency. In the past, everybody wanted dollars as a reserve currency, and it was a stabilizing effect and so forth. But now the yuan is also listed, not as much as the U.S., but it's still now listed by the IMF as a eligible reserve currency. So, as Norman has been pointed out about de-dollarization and American power through money and the fact that now we have digital ability to move money back and forth.
Right.
This is going to be something that's going to have to watch very, very carefully and could undermine some of Trump's hubris.
Of course, I really enjoy the fact that we all can discuss from across continents and, of course, in the studio. And ladies and gentlemen, they were, of course, talking about the de-dollarization process regarding Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, those who make up the BRICS. I want to have another question due to time restraint. I must ask this to Norman Floyd Barnes. As we were talking about all of these issues, we know that the nuclear capacity or capable missile system, the Reznik hypersonic missile, had been used by the Russian counterpart on Ukraine in an overnight missile attack. Of course, it had struck the city of Lviv, which is just on the border with Poland. But at this moment, the Ukraine-Russia war is not dragging on, or it's not garnering any kind of foreign attention to this matter, especially in the lieu of Greenland and how NATO could be affected because of the U.S. intention of the Western Hemisphere. I want your closing statement regarding this and whether you can predict this may be the year of the World War III, or if likewise situation can resume. I want to understand from Norman Floyd Barnes.
Well, that's a great big prediction. My crystal ball is not that clear right now, but there's a lot of stuff, a lot of smoke, a lot of situations leading up to what's going on right now. We're going to basically go through this year dealing with conflicts. We were dealing with unresolved issues. There may be more flare-ups. There be maybe, I don't know what's going to happen with Iran. That's going to be a big thing. The use of weapons, the use of hypersonic technology is going to be a game changer. There's rumors that these technologies are already in place in Latin America. There's rumors that they are in place in the Middle East, and everything is on target, is on the table right now. So we're going to see a lot more incidents, I predict, coming up this year. There are a lot more confrontations. I do not think we're going to the point of World War III, because the big three, Russia, China, and the United States, have a ideology that they have a common agreement on how to deal with the overall big picture. But beneath that, there will be a lot more incidents that is going to involve regional matters, local matters, and it's going to cause a lot of problems and concern to trade and commerce. But the biggest thing right now is how will the world adjust and adapt to this? Because right now, everybody is in a state of siege and no one knows what's going on. So that's going to affect trade, commerce, and good business practices. Right now, we are basically holding our breath, and hopefully they're not coming for me. I'm not going to be hit tomorrow. I'm not going to be invaded tomorrow. No one's going to try to take my country, take my resources, whatever.
Right.
Everybody in the
I believe that Norman Floyd Barnes has been disconnected. However, he was talking about various issues pertaining to the global world order. I believe it is time for a short break, but after the break, we shall be in the studio discussing more pressing news items across the world and over the weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, do stay with us on this very broadcast.
For corporate events, weddings and parties. Seamless and secured. Elegant and eye-catching design. Indulge, relax, discover the first 5-star chain hotels in Bangladesh. Grand Palace Hotel Dhaka, 22 Kakrail, Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Welcome to Grand Club at Mirpur 10 Dhaka. Elegant spa and wellness facility for ladies and gents. Play pool and snooker. in international standard billiard zone. World-class gym facility with exclusive equipment for man and women. A restaurant of delicious local and international cuisine. Fully air-conditioned building with spacious banquet, car lift, sky view rooftop restaurant, all in one. Grand Club Limited, Mirpur 10, Dhaka.
কি এমন জিনিস যেটা সব লোকে খায়, ছোটরা খেলে পরে কেঁদে মায়ের কাছে যায়, বৃদ্ধ লোক খেলে পরে মাথায় দেয় হাত, যুবক যুবতীরা খেলে পরে এদিক ওদিক তাকায়?
ছেড়ে দে শয়তান, ছেড়ে দে। দেহ পেলে আমার মন পাবি না, ছেড়ে দে।
কোন ফলের বীজ নেই বলো দেখি?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back on International Affairs. I believe this is the last segment. I want to talk about a different angle. We always talk about how the U.S. influences policy and decision making from all throughout the world. But this time around, I want to talk about the second contender in line. Of course, I'm talking about China as a whole. I know that Xi Jinping has been the leader of China ever since, and no one has contested him in his nation for the last better half of the last 2 decades. Of course, China has a developmental bank, and of course, they have huge initiatives not only in China but across the neighborhoods, the Belt and Road Initiative, but also how they have helped, if not lured nations in Africa, nations in Southern Americas, the Latin Americas, into debt financing. So if a nation goes into a debt model, of course, they need angel investors to make sure of the country's operations. As we were talking during the break, Sir Dalton, I want to understand how you felt about China and how they are giving and offering big loans, fast construction, fewer political conditions than the IMF or the World Bank. I want to understand how you felt.
Well, I mean, they're devil investors. They're not angel investors.
Correct.
You know, their whole attitude, and what's interesting is that when I was working in Africa, as I've worked extensively in Africa, the Chinese will come, the China government will come, and they have state-owned enterprises that are very, very strong and powerful, railroad companies, construction companies. They will come and they will offer some fantastic deals. And these deals are based on the host country assuming the debt payback. But they're usually so large that the predicted revenues from the investment never get big enough to be able to amortize the debt. And so the debt keeps growing to the point where it occupies a large portion, sometimes up to 50% of the annual budget is dedicated to debt repayment. And there are some countries which have defaulted on the debt, like Sri Lanka, and therefore at the port of Hambantota, which was financed by the Chinese, they have now taken over direct command of that port.
And not only so, they have taken over it for 99 years.
Yeah, well, that's another good point. I wasn't aware of the length of the deal, but that is typically how they get their foot in the door, by offering concessional terms, low interest, and less control, less rules and regulations. And that was the one thing that attracted a lot of African countries. They would come when I would work with them, and they would say, "Well, Chinese don't offer all of these conditions. You know, you have all these environmental protections and labor laws and women and blah blah blah." They just come in and say, "This is a financial transaction. Here's the project. Here's the money. Let's get it done." And so America, by all of the rules that they had established peripheral to the financial transaction, were enabling China to enter into markets which really did not have an interest in enforcing all of these side regulations. They did the same thing in Latin America. They did the same thing, for example, in Venezuela, which is, you know, if anyone saw the swearing-in ceremony of the new president of Venezuela, she immediately went over and was hugging and kissing the Chinese ambassador and the Russian ambassador. So their association and their linkage is much, much stronger than the United States, which bases it on power, rules, enforcing these regulations. So I feel that, Bangladesh is in that same predicament. They have both private debt and government-to-government debt that is overwhelming the budget. And there's so little money left over to finance delivery of services for education or health or local government development or environmental protection or any of those other areas that the country is unable to deliver services at the grassroots for lack of budget. The budget is all being paid to these lenders because failing to do that, to going into default, stops your ability to go to the IMF and ask for relief. So, they've played their game very, very well about how to gain control through offering you a loan that they know you can't pay, and then taking your assets and using them for their advantage.
I understand that this is very big and significant for a nation even like Bangladesh, as because not only so India and Pakistan, especially Pakistan, if you would like to see, they have their own China-Pakistan economic corridor in which it is over 60 billion in Chinese loans under the CPEC. Of course, they will be building power plants, ports, roads, but the nation of Pakistan is now stuck under IMF bailouts, partly due to Chinese debt. So that's very similar model is very active in Bangladesh. As I know, the ousted government had very close talks with their Chinese counterpart, and the leader of the ousted government, her last visit was to China before her ouster. So all of this indicates a bigger notion of Chinese foreign policy would be different. They would help out impoverished economies as far as I know it. But then, as you were saying, it would be hard for those economies to pay back this loan. Hence, the ownership of those assets would go into China, which is important. I want to have a last question before I can do the closing. Do you think that in the future days, there would be, we know that an election and a referendum is happening on the very same day. What is the Chinese position towards Bangladesh, if you would like to enlighten us?
Oh, they won't say a word about that. Whatever they do, it's going to be very much in secret or quiet. No, they don't try to pick winners when there's no incumbent government. If they have an association with the incumbent government, well, then maybe they will throw their weight that way and give them some money, make them have a project that makes them look good. But I don't think they want to have anything to do with the election or with the referendum. And the referendum is fraught with problems. So, I think that has to be considered as well, that there are many people who don't really think that it dealt with any of the substantive issues in Bangladesh. It was basically a political accommodation. Who gets elected, who gets appointed, how many members here, who's in the upper house, who's in the lower house. It was all like politics, Rubik's Cube. There was absolutely nothing for the people in the I should not say that exactly strongly as that. There was little in there that would provide evidence that the new government is going to care about education, women's rights, environmental protection, corruption. There's little in the charter that deals with that.
Of course, these issues only garner popularity for those who are talking about it, but in reality, those issues, whether or not they'll be able to address them in the face of 200 million people in this country is a matter of question. I must thank you, Sir John Dalton, for your insight and valuable contributions to this program, International Affairs. I must also thank Norman Floyd Barnes, who had joined us from Washington, D.C. Ladies and gentlemen, today is January 11th, and on this day in 1922, 14-year-old Leonard Thompson became the first person to receive an insulin injection for type 1 diabetes, a disease that for a millennia had controlled and considered a death sentence for anyone who developed it. The breakthrough would be one of the most consequential in medical history, saving millions of lives. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. I shall catch you all on tomorrow's International Affairs. Do stay tuned.